talking to us a little bit about, again, how response works. So I'm going to pull this up and hand it over to you, Patrick. And this is your, it doesn't have a pointer, but it has a clicker. Okay, awesome.
So I'm glad I didn't use that photograph. I had actually looked at it, but
Did you? Oh, you could have
so,
said, "Let's dig in."
Yeah, so my name is Patrick Coleman. Got about 18 years experience with the Coast Guard as either a reservist or a civilian employee. My reserve assignments have been with Sector Mobile, Sector New Orleans, and currently with the Coast Guard's Atlantic area in Portsmouth, Virginia. As part of those reserve assignments, I've done 3.5 years of call-up on Deepwater Horizon. I started off as a liaison officer, incident command post here in Mobile. Eventually moved to Florida to be the liaison officer to the state. Then took over as a branch director under operations. And eventually moved to the Gulf Coast Incident Management Team in New Orleans and became the deputy incident commander and the federal on-scene coordinator's representative for Deepwater. Most recently, I was assigned with Sector New Orleans, and I did about 8 months of the Mississippi Canyon 20 event. It's been ongoing for a while. So that was a good experience as well. Currently, I'm a civilian employee with the Coast Guard. I've been with Sector Mobile a little over 3 years. I work in contingency planning, so like Charlie Henry mentioned, I'm now more into the preparedness mode than response. My current billet with Atlantic area is in the exercise division, so again, a lot of preparedness. So with my position in Mobile, I do a lot of work with the area contingency plan and the area committees. I won't claim to be an expert, but I thought I would share with you some of my experiences here in Deepwater. When Larissa asked, was I available? I said absolutely. Sea Grant guys are really, do a really good job working with us for our area committee meetings and supporting us and attending those meetings and presenting science to the committee. So thank you guys for what you do and for supporting us, and glad we could be here for you. So again, when asked to do this, I kind of thought about response and how it works and challenges to the nearshore environment and beach habitats and some of my experiences. So first slide, and I kind of always like to put something like this up there, and it just kind of talks about all of the different missions that the Coast Guard has. And if you look at the top, I like that, statutory missions. So if you look, let's see, about the 4th, 5th one there, marine environmental protection and pollution. So that is a statutory mission of the Coast Guard. And there are a lot of other things up there too. I always kind of like to put that up there so everyone can see exactly what we do. But again, MEP, marine environmental protection, is a statutory mission of the Coast Guard. Statutory, so where does that authority come from? Several pieces of legislation or presidential directives, Homeland Security presidential directives, executive directives, but I think the one that we all think about most is OPA 90, the Oil Pollution Act of 1990. Came into play after Exxon Valdez, and I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know, but I thought it would appropriate to just kind of include a few of these things as far as where we get our statutory authorities from. So a couple of lessons learned from Exxon Valdez. The United States lacked adequate resources, particularly for federal funds, to respond to spills. And scope of damages compensable under federal law to those impacted was fairly narrow. And I'm pulling a lot of this information directly from the National Pollution Fund Center's website, so you can always take a look at that for more information. Just a quick overview. The OPA 90 amended the Clean Water Act. We'll kind of look down at some of those bullet items there. I think for me, a couple of those I like to look at are that mandated contingency planning. We have the national contingency plan. We have regional plans. We have area contingency plans at the sector levels. Now, all that's coming out of OPA 90. broadening enforcement authorities, increased penalties, enhanced federal response capabilities. So, a lot of those things, that's where we get our authorities from. And I know I said I would talk a lot about my experiences with deep water, but I thought I really should mention that, as you know, that most spills aren't of that size. So the bulk of our calls that come in through the National Response Center, they're typically pretty small spills. I mean, you can have anything from a cup of hydraulic fluid up to 100 gallons of some diesel gasoline or oil or something of that nature. We respond to every one of those NRC calls. Sometimes we don't even get the NRC call. Sometimes the call comes directly to the sector. In those cases, we still respond. We always go back and file that NRC report as well. So we investigate every NRC report, regardless of the size. It can be a drop, and we're still going to investigate and document everything we find in the database that we have. Again, not all spills are large. They're small. A lot of them are mystery machines. Some of them we never determine who the responsible party is. And that's where Open 90 can kick in with the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund and pay for some of that removal if necessary when we don't have a responsible party. So again, we respond to every call, whether or not we actually get a report from the National Response Center or it comes directly to us. Maybe it comes through the state. I was in Florida, a lot of experience there. The state watch office will get those reports and give them to us directly. So again, we respond to everyone, whether or not it's a small or large spill. And this is kind of the bulk of what I'd like to speak to you guys a little bit about. Working in Florida during Deepwater as a branch director, lots of sandy beaches in Florida, and then moving over to New Orleans as the deputy incident commander in the FOSCR and kind of managing all three of those states, or 4 states. From a response standpoint, you see a lot of things, and these were some of the issues that we ran into. And I don't know, not all these are challenges per se, but things we still had to consider. So there's a very diverse coastline here in the Gulf of Mexico, from marshes and mangroves in Louisiana, and then as you move east into the sandy beaches, barrier islands, and the appropriate cleanup methodologies are different for each one of those types of coastline. So that was a challenge for us, is to take a look at that diverse coastline and try to figure out what's the most appropriate tool here in our toolbox to use to remove this pollution. Diverse group of landowners, and what I mean by that is, from a federal standpoint, we had Department of Defense, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Property, Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, and their state lands, counties, cities, and trying to access, or even private lands, and getting access to those lands. Certain owners had different thoughts on how their properties were cleaned, and that's okay. So, for example, National Park Service, we didn't do the same things we did on an amenity beach as far as a deeper cleaning. So again, knowing the landowner and what was expected was again something we absolutely had to consider. Identification of a responsible party, and of course with Deepwater that was an easy one, but it's not always that easy. A lot of times we get the mystery sheen calls, and there may or may not be an obvious responsible party, and we try to investigate and do the best we can. Sometimes we don't find that RP. And in cases like that, when there is cleanup to be done, we can federalize that case and open up the the Ulster Liability Trust Fund, and use those monies to hire a contractor and form cleanup. The next two are not really challenges, but I put those up there because of the importance of those two items. And kind of embarrassed to say, before Deepwater, I didn't realize maybe how important these items are. But Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, it's a big deal if you're not considering that when you have some sort of response. You have to. I mean, it's one thing, it's federal law, but once you get into it and you see the reason behind the law, and it's a good thing. And involving those state historic preservation officers and tribal historic preservation officers, and what kind of effect is the response having on those historical properties, and giving those folks a chance to comment and work with you to develop those plans on how you're going to mitigate any damage to those properties. Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act, same thing. Grew up on the beaches all my life. Born and raised in Baldwin County. I live in Florida now, in the Pensacola area. And never noticed a piping plover until the spill. And I'm out with a resource advisor one day at Fort Pickens, and they're pointing them out to me, and I couldn't see them. And once I finally saw them, now I see them all the time. Didn't realize they were there the whole time, but it just took realizing what they were to actually get an understanding of it. So you have to plan for that as well. Have those resource advisors, or those natural resource advisors, I think is another name we use for those folks. Give them an opportunity to look at your plans, how you're going to do a cleanup, what kind of endangered species are we looking at, or any kind of animal for that matter. I think one of the bigger challenges we had, and Dr. Michelle may kind of comment on this at some point, but coming to an agreement on endpoints and trying to decide how clean is clean. We didn't have real strong background data on a lot of our beaches. A lot of our states would say that BP oil was not background, so therefore it should all be removed. It's very difficult to do that, of course. So we worked hard on a document that did name some endpoints. And finally, after some time of negotiating and discussions, came to some conclusions on an agreement on endpoints. And it took quite a while to get there. The beaches were, in my opinion, in the most part, really, really clean when we signed those out. We should have good background levels now. I don't know if there are any studies out there from the Sea Grant folks on looking at that, but I would think now that we should have good background information. Net environmental benefit analysis was another kind of a challenge. Sometimes it's better to leave it alone and let it degrade naturally, especially in some of these sensitive areas where you may do more damage with the response than you would just by letting it degrade naturally. So we didn't take that lightly. We looked at that really hard. We did studies, talked to a lot of experts before any of those decisions were made. And there were a few decisions made using NEBAs. Those don't always go over real well with the general public. I don't think they quite understand it. But it is a tool that's in the toolbox, and it's a beneficial tool, and should be considered using that tool where it's needed. Here's something that was really big for me, using local knowledge to inform response actions. Early on, we kind of, kept the locals, out of the incident command post. But as time went by, I think, we were able to allow those guys in, and they know their lands better than we do, and they have a lot of knowledge that can help inform response actions, whether that was boom placement or currents or anything like that. But it's a lesson learned for us, and part of the lessons learned coming out of Deepwater was to get the locals involved more with your area committees and developing those area contingency plans. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that here at Sector Mobile. So again, really working hard to get the locals involved with what we're doing. And that next one was also an issue for me, at least in Florida. PPE in harsh climate. They're removing oil, a lot of the personal protective equipment. It's hot, and in the middle of summer, there would be these OSHA, work-rest ratios where people were working maybe 15, 20 minutes out of an hour. And to the general public, that's not a good look either, but it is what it is. We're trying to keep people safe, and not just the summers. We had a couple of pretty good winters through there as well. So out of January, February, trying to pick up tar balls off the beach with a pretty stout wind would be difficult as well. So just things to think about. Tropical weather, we did have a couple of tropical storms come through in the middle of cleanup. Still have oil on the water. So some of those storms took that oil up into the super tidal zone, made it difficult to recover that pollution. We had a lot of high tides that would bring the oil in, deposit it, and with these sand beaches, especially the barrier islands, they change overnight. They erode, they accrete, and if you didn't get that oil up immediately, before you knew it, it would be buried. And I mean, there were places where it was 18 to 24 inches deep. So the problem became, how do you find it now? Is it there? We would have these winter storms and have some erosion, and we would see it. So on the amenity beaches, we did a lot of deep cleaning with mechanical type equipment. So we're pretty comfortable we were getting deep enough there. But on the National Park Service property, we weren't going very deep with mechanical cleaning. Ended up trying to use augers to bore some holes and try to find it that way. Later on in the response, the version 3 of the Operational Science Advisory Team came back together and took a look at maybe how to identify some of this buried oil, and I think that's some good science come out of that. If you haven't taken a look at that report, I think it's a pretty good report that it's beneficial to us. I think I skipped the appropriate cleanup methodologies there. Again, trying to figure out what's the best tool in the toolbox to use for that given piece of property, that landowner. What are the endangered species there? What are the issues with any kind of historic sites? And so we look at our SCAT teams, come together and write those recommendations for us and put all those tools out there for us to look at and discuss as a group and come together and agree on a tool. But some of the things we used was booming, skimming, in situ burns. I know we're talking about nearshore, but some of this would still be used. Dispersant, probably not so much in the nearshore. Flushing, manual recovery, mechanical recovery, sorbents, vacuums, tilling, vegetation cutting. Mechanical, it was pretty interesting to see some of the ideas coming out. There was a device called a Sand Shark that worked really well. It's kind of a new piece of equipment. Was really large, like a farm implement kind of deal. So yeah, lots of mechanical removal there on those amenity beaches where we could actually dig a little bit. And I put this photo up there just so you kind of see that PPE. You can imagine wearing that in July or August. It'd be quite warm. So those guys would work in teams and would switch out and rest and drink fluids and cool down. And then I found this photograph actually on the NOAA website. I thought it was kind of interesting. You can see the excavator there and that other larger piece of equipment there, you know, kind of on that mountain of sand, is a sifter. So they would dig the sand, drop it into the sifter, good sand falls out the bottom, tar gets taken on those conveyor belts to these dump trucks, and then take it off the beach. So just another technique there that was used. This was used quite a bit on Pensacola Beach, and I believe on the beaches in Alabama as well. So yeah, just a good shot of mechanical cleanup technique. And I know that wasn't much. Had about 15 minutes. I thought maybe we could talk a little bit, and then about 5 minutes for some question and answer. Again, I think it's important to note that we do respond to every NRC call, no matter how small or how large. It all gets documented. We have a database. It's called Missile. Those cases get opened up, and they get closed out in that database. So if you place a phone call to the National Response Center, it's going to get to the appropriate Coast Guard sector, and someone will respond to that. I know in Mississippi we have a really good relationship with those folks, and sometimes the Mississippi folks will go out and take a look for us to see exactly what we're dealing with before we go over. Don't have that with everybody, but folks in Mississippi are really good about that as well. So again, we respond to everything.
Patrick, do you mind if we just wait on questions and you and Jackie take them together?
That's yeah.
Okay, perfect.